Previously, we talked about methods. Methods are a way of hiding the complexity from the main part of your program, okay? And we learned how to do that quite well, I think. Now let's move on to classes. We already used a class with the main in it, okay? But sometimes we want to hide complexity from that class that has the main in it, okay? And so we can move stuff out of there and put it into a different class, okay? What is a class? A class is a data type. Remember data types? Boy, that's an integer and a double and things like that too, isn't it? Okay. And a data type not only has the ability to store information, for example, a variable, we also found out that we can also have methods, okay? For example, an integer, okay? We can create an integer type, okay, a variable, and we can store a value in there. And we can also use that int class, okay, to convert a double into integer, can't we? The example that they have in the book is a class called employee, okay? The cool thing about that is you can make many of these, okay? Many employees, and you can store a first name, last name, and salary for each of those employees, okay? We can also perform actions, okay? We can get or set those variables, those private variables that we have set in there, and we can also print out some information. So we have the ability to store information, and we also have methods to carry out something that we want to do. Important thing to understand about classes before we move too far is to understand that they can be used as a static object, okay? Many times you might have only one employee, or as you can see later, we're going to create a class that's got special formulas that we can hide in it, okay? But then other times you want to make a non-static class, okay, where we can have multiple instances, multiple employees. Let's switch over to Eclipse. Here I have created a class that I put a whole bunch of my, this is metric conversion, okay, for Celsius into Fahrenheit and kilometers into miles and things like that, okay? Once again, this is something that I use often, okay? And as long as I put this class within the same working folder as my class with my main in it, okay, I can reuse these over and over again. And you're going to see how we're going to do that. I also have the example that they have in the book, okay? An employee class, okay? This one is intended to make many objects out of one. If we look back at my formulas, here's that word static. Static says that you don't have to make objects. You can use it just like it is, okay? Employee, there you don't see static, okay? There you have to make an object out of this to use it. Inside of employee, you're going to see here we got a bunch of local variables that we can store information about each individual employee, okay? The first name, last name, things like that. Then we have what they call constructors, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But the important thing to see about these constructors is that one has no parameters, and one's got what the employee number, last name, first name, and salary, okay? And then we got a bunch of little methods in here for getting and setting private variables. We'll talk about that later too. And then we got one method in here prints out a bunch of information about the employees, okay? Usually when you're creating classes, okay, and you have formulas in them or you get employees or something like that, you usually create a test class, okay, that will actually check these out. Inside here you get a main, okay? A main, of course, is the first method that the compiler looks at to run, okay? Let's make a call of one of these formulas in my formulas, okay? I'm going to go to Canada. I want to find out, let's see, if my speedometer says 70, okay, how many kilometers is that? If I go to my test class here, I can actually call a method of that class by first calling out the class. My formulas. Dot. Oh, and here they pop right up for me, okay? I'm going to use the miles to kilometers, okay? Right there. It says how many miles? Let's put 70 miles in there, okay? semicolon, like that. Right now we aren't doing anything with this, okay? So let's create a double. Let's say double kilometers, K-I-L-O-M, is equal to, because that returns a value, doesn't it? Returns a double, okay? And then let's go out and print that out there, okay? Let's say something like system.out.print.printf, okay? And let's say something like 70 miles per hour equals, okay, and let's say placeholder D, okay, for a double in kilometers. Let's see, kilometers per hour, like that, okay? Like that. My only argument here, I only have one placeholder, and that is kilometers, isn't it? Like that, and a closing semicolon, like that. Okay? Don't forget, I always forget my \n for a new line. Let's go ahead and run this, okay? Like that. Oh, got a printf error here. Let's see, not D, because that stands for integer F, huh? And let's put up 0.2F in there. Try it again. There we go. 70 miles per hour equals 112. Okay. Anyway, that's one example using that static class, okay? Now let's use my employee class, okay, which is not static. I can use create many objects of employee of that, okay? You have to do that a little differently, okay? You actually have to create an instance, just like you create an instance of an integer variable, something like that. To do that, rather than typing in, we're going to type the name of our class, okay? And then the name of the variable of that data type employee, okay? I'm going to call it employee1, okay? And now we have to say that's equal to a new instance of employee, like that, okay? And then opening, closing parentheses, okay? What that does is that calls the constructor, and don't worry about that too much, okay? But that calls constructor here, okay? Constructor is the same name, always has the same name as employee, okay? It's a method with the same name as the class, okay? And what that does is that actually creates this instance, okay? In this case, it actually puts a bunch of defaults and stuff like that, okay? For these variables, these private variables. I also have another one that I can actually send it the employee number, last name, first name, and salary, okay? And then it'll put that information there right away for me, okay? Don't worry about too much for now. We're going to work on that later. Let's create another employee, okay, type variable, okay? We're going to call this employee2, okay? And that's going to equal a new employee, okay? And this time, let's give it a bunch of information, okay? We have to do it exactly as the constructor, okay? First of all, let's just say this is employee number 1, and his last name is, I'm going to put my last name in there, and the first name is Tom, like that. Okay, and what is my salary? Oh, I'm going to make $35,000 a year, I think. That's a double, okay? That's not a bad wage. Semicolon, just like that, okay? So now I've created two instances or two objects of employee data type, okay? One other thing we can do is once we create these, now for each individual object, we can call out a method, okay? Employee 1 is going to be different than employee 2. Employee 1 is going to be all defaults and zeros and things like that, okay? Employee 2 should have some meaningful information in the variables because we've sent it that. Let's go ahead and PLY employee2 dot, okay, and I've got a print employee right here, okay. I actually created a method that'll print some cool stuff out for us. Okay, so now what's going to happen, of course, we're going to see this again. Let me clear this out, okay. Clear that out, okay. Once again, we're going to print this out. It's going to say 70 miles, some blah, blah, blah. We're going to create a new employee with no information, no parameters, okay? And it should print out something for us. And we're also going to create another one, employee 2, and this time we're going to give it some information, and it's also going to print out something. And then we're going to see this employee 2 dot print employee, and it should print out information that is stored in this object of employee that's called employee 2, okay? Sure enough, right there, each constructor actually prints something out. This is called, or it says default, new employee called Tom DeYoung. Tom DeYoung makes an annual income of, yeah, there we go, $35,000, okay?